A lot of spending money lately. The NBA free agent frenzy has not stopped. The big one this morning, Kemba Walker and the Oklahoma City Thunder have agreed to a contract buyout this morning, paving the way for Walker to sign with his hometown New York Knicks. That according to Adrian Wojnarowski. Thunder general manager Sam Presti and Walker's agents worked to come to an agreement on a buyout of the 2 years and $74 million remaining on Walker's contract. I said hometown. Who could flash back and forget to this memorable moment from Kemba, 2011, the Big East quarterfinals, the step back, tied at 74 against Pitt. That won the game. A magical season for the Huskies. They went on to win the national championship. Kemba in front of the home crowd. By the way, that Pitt team was a 1 seed in the tournament.
How was that a decade ago?
Got bounced in the second round. See, I was trying to avoid the, hey, look how old we are.
I'm sorry, but it feels like yesterday.
Well, maybe it was in some people's minds. Walker's New York homecoming is just the latest of a number of returns to the city this offseason. Over the past 5 weeks, Knicks have been busy from the upcoming season. They've been adding players on Tuesday. Evan Fournier, the Celtics, signed a 4-year, $78 million deal to also join the Knicks. In other news today, we had some busy stuff this morning. Restricted free agent forward John Collins, a 5-year, $125 million deal to stay with the Hawks, also according to WOJ. The deal includes a player option in the 5th year. Collins averaged 21.6 points and 10.1 rebounds per game.
And then do the math on this one, or not, because it might make you feel bad. But Steph Curry has a 4-year, $215 million extension with the Warriors. He is the only NBA player to get multiple $200 million deals. The Bulls, they pulled off a sign and trade with the Spurs, and it's gotten Chicago DeMar DeRozan on a 3-year, $85 million deal. He can actually sign it Friday when that free agent moratorium is lifted. And the Nets, they're getting some depth for their backcourt, courtesy of a Patty Mills. After 10 years with the Spurs, at 12 in the league, he's got a new 2-year deal with Brooklyn. And then there are the Lakers, who are getting even older. By adding Carmelo Anthony to the mix, he's going to spend his 19th season in LA. It's a 1-year deal, so he'll join LeBron, AD, and Russell Westbrook. But look at this. The Lakers have now signed 7 free agents. Plus, they traded for Westbrook. So they're experienced and just plain getting older, because 6 players are 32 or older, and that is the most ever added in a single offseason in NBA history. I'm not going to average out this next shot, but Bobby Marks is here. We are in front of the screen. Look, they've been busy, have the Lakers, but they still have some work to do because there are 3 open spots. So who and what should they be targeting?
Yeah, they've got 12 players under contract. As we saw with the recent signing, the veteran minimum exception, bargain shopping, the tax mid-level went to Kendrick Nunn right there. It's a top-heavy roster here. The one name that we can keep an eye on, right, is a player like Dennis Schroeder. They still have his bird rights here. What happens with Schroeder there? That's kind of the name to keep an eye on, because maybe you can flip him down the road here. But 3 roster spots. You're looking at minimum players unless you can maybe do something with Schroeder.
Okay, the Lakers are obviously making a big splash, but they're not the only team making moves. We just mentioned some of the things that Chicago has done. The Bulls, a free agent frenzy, if you will, because they got Lonzo Ball, DeMar DeRozan, and Alex Caruso. They have all been added to that roster. So now you have 3 20-point scorers from a season ago in Vucevic and DeMar DeRozan and Lonzo Ball. But much like the Lakers, Bobby, they also have holes to fill. So again, same question for the Bulls. What should they be looking at, or who?
So they've got 9 players under contract here with the DeMar DeRozan signing. Alex Caruso also came out. They added Tony Bradley today. They still have restricted free agent Lauri Markkanen. They've got his bird rights. They can sign him to the qualifying offer, which is at $9 million. But that's another team that's got a lot of holes to fill. They've got the veteran minimum exception. I'm not ready to put them up there with Philadelphia, Brooklyn, Milwaukee, even Miami. This is still kind of a tier B team, but they've got 5 roster spots, and there's still work to do. But it's a great start when you can add Lonzo and certainly DeMar DeRozan, Alex Caruso. This is kind of what's going to be a little bit of a wild card this offseason. Zach LaVine. Yeah, he's extension eligible. He's looking for his contract to be renegotiated. They don't have cap space to do it. The potential is that he's going to have to play out the year and enter next year as an unrestricted free agent.
Here's a guy who's also said,
Back to the NBA, we need the Lakers capologist to address our nation's national deficit. Tuesday, the Lakers added Melo to the fold. It's a one-year deal, got to be team-friendly, given their flurry of other moves. Nunn, Monk, Horton, Tucker. Anthony averaged 13.5 in 24 minutes last season, became the 10th all-time leading scorer in NBA history as well. Once all of these moves become official, the Lakers will have 13 players on their roster, 8 of whom are age 32 or older. That puts LA on track to have one of the oldest teams in NBA history. Only 4 teams have had an average age of 32 or older. The Lakers, of course, will hope to follow in the footsteps of the '98 Bulls, who won it all. But between LeBron and Melo and Dwight and Russ, that's 4 of the top 60 scorers in NBA history. Bobby Marks joins us now. So a lot of us are wondering, there's a salary cap here, right? I mean, how are they pulling this off? Explain the money.
Yeah, when we entered free agency, the Lakers had about $130 million, which was $18 million over the $112 million salary cap. So their options were really limited. We called it bargain shopping here. And what they were able to do was they had 3 different options. Talen Horton-Tucker, they signed him today to the early bird exception. They're allowed to exceed the salary cap to do so. He was on the roster for 2 years. And then you look at a player like Kendrick Nunn, who was in Miami. That is the taxpayer mid-level exception. So he got most of that. And then here's all your bargains. Kent Bazemore, Trevor Ariza, Dwight, Carmelo, Malik Monk, Wayne Ellington, all took the veteran minimum exception. And I like what they did today with Malik Monk. You're able to get Kendrick Nunn. You got a little bit younger. You got some shooting to put around the big 3 here. And they still have 3 roster spots. But the most important thing, $34 million luxury tax penalty, the biggest ever in Laker franchise history. So there's a cost associated to this roster.
They'll be writing a lot of checks there. Yeah. And by the way, earlier in the day today, it was the big fella, Marc Gasol, saying, in fact, he would be coming back to the Lakers next season. We've talked a lot about first dominoes falling, right? We've seen quite a few dominoes fall so far, Bobby. Who's left?
Yeah, so I call them the cap space free agents. That's what their label was before free agency started. Those aren't the players who are going to sign for the taxpayer mid-level or even the full mid-level. That's the players like Spencer Dinwiddie, Larry Markkinen, Reggie Jackson, Dennis Schroeder, who was with the Lakers there. And the problem right now is that the market's frozen. There's only about 3 teams that have cap space. You're looking at a team like Charlotte. New York's got a little bit. San Antonio, Oklahoma City. So a player like Dinwiddie trying to arrange a sign and trade to get to Washington. It's complicated because the Nets want compensation back. Right. We saw in the DeMar DeRozan sign and trade. They got a first-round pick, 2 seconds. Devontae Graham to New Orleans. Charlotte got a first-round pick. So you got to have some, you've got to work with the team here. Schroeder is the most interesting one for me. Turned down 4 years, $84 million, and is now looking for a new home.
Gambled on himself.
As we are 24 and a half hours in, the Nets are adding guard Patty Mills, a steady presence off the bench for the Spurs for a decade. He averaged 11 points per game last season. Brooklyn also keeping Bruce Brown and signing James Johnson. Andre Drummond is going to Philly. Woj reporting Drummond has a 1-year deal with the Sixers. He was bought out by the Cavs last season, then averaged a double-double for the Lakers. Now, this might have been almost 3 years ago, but Twitter has the receipts. Now his current teammate, Joel Embiid, tweeted at Andre Drummond that he owned real estate in his head. Again, that was back in 2018. It's going to be an interesting dynamic and one that Philly Sports Radio will enjoy dissecting this summer. As for the team, Drummond is leaving the Lakers. Ready for this? Yesterday, they had 5 players on the roster, now 13. Talen Horton-Tucker re-signing on a 3-year, $32 million contract. The 20-year-old averaged 9 points last season and a 2-year deal with former Heat guard Kendrick Nunn. Woj reporting he turned down more money for a title run with the Lakers. And, of course, earlier as we reported, they added Carmelo Anthony, giving them 2 of the top 10 scorers in NBA history, but when you make that list, it means a lot of wear and tear and a lot of birthdays. According to Elias Sports Bureau, the Lakers have never rostered 4 35-year-old players at the same time. As it stands now, they have 5, and 8 over the age of 32 as well. Horton-Tucker and Nunn helping to bring down the average. Holy cow. NBA front office insider Bobby Marks joining us now. What stands out to how the Lakers are adding this type of depth here on a potential championship run in the offseason?
Yeah, I think it's two things. I think they checked the boxes for regular season depth and also for playoff depth. And when you added the 8 players to what was already here with 5, players here certainly with Russell and LeBron and AD here. Today was about the youth movement, right? Yesterday was about, players like Trevor Ariza, Dwight Howard, Wayne Ellington. Today was all about the youth movement. And I think when you're looking at players like, Kendrick Nunn is not on here, but players like Kendrick Nunn, who's on here, he's probably on the shooting guard. He's probably on the shooting guard list. Kendrick Nunn there. We had him projected at $11 million. As WOJ said, he turned down more money to come to the Lakers, signed for $5 million. Malik Monk, we had him projected at about $8 million. He comes to the Lakers for the veteran minimum exception. Wayne Ellington yesterday. My only concern is Nunn, Monk, and Ellington a combined 30 playoff games in their career. So a little bit of a lack of playoff experience there, but they've got some depth now. Now it's all about keeping the big 3 healthy.
Right now, the roster has five future Hall of Famers when you look at it, when you talk about Dwight Howard being added to Carmelo Anthony and this group right here at the top. Meanwhile, another big deal in the NBA today. DeMar DeRozan to the Bulls, sign and trade. Woj is reporting he'll sign a 3-year, $85 million contract. The Spurs will get the expiring contracts of Thaddeus Young and Al-Farouq Aminu, a first-round pick in 2 seconds. A lot is moving on in the East here. Sixers have not moved a lot. The Nets have just kind of quietly adjusted. But yesterday the conversation is the Heat making moves. How do they stack up against the Bucks and the Nets? Now, when you look at the moves the Bulls have made in the last 24 hours, how do they stack up to these teams in the East?
I'm not ready to put them up there with the big boys yet. Yeah. I still think they're kind of that tier 2 team, maybe with a team like New York. Atlanta in that group there, probably in that 4 to 6 range here. It's interesting with DeRozan. We talked about him yesterday. Maybe he would go to Miami for the mid-level exception, $9.5 million. 3 years, $85 million, fully guaranteed. And what they were able to do, it's a sign and trade with San Antonio. Players like Al-Farouq Aminu, Thaddeus Young, that works. You send DeRozan back into there, and that's your roster there. Now there's work to be done. 8 players under contract. They've got 6 roster spots. The big question is, can they bring Lauri Markkanen back, who's a restricted free agent? But you've got to like a starting lineup with, certainly with Lonzo, not LaMelo, Lonzo, DeRozan, Zach LaVine. Remember we talked about renegotiation. Will it make Zach LaVine happy? I think it will, and certainly Nikola Vucevic. So they've done a really nice job over the last couple days here. But as I said, there's still some work to be done.
And let's not forget the Spurs are going to get a first-round pick and 2 second-round picks. But Vucevic was the shocker that we saw at the trade deadline. We thought the Bulls were sellers. It's a completely different attitude and mindset now that they brought in Vucevic during the season, adding some other big key names here. We'll see how this plays out for Billy Donovan as the East gets better.
The money hasn't even dried up yet in the NBA. More names finding homes on Tuesday. Steph Curry won't be leaving the Bay Area anytime soon. He agreed to an extension that'll keep him with the Dubs through 2026. First player in the history of the NBA to sign multiple $200 million deals.
It's all relative, right?
Yes.
What's $1 million to Steph Curry?
Meantime, the Lakers stayed busy adding Carmelo Anthony to a veteran-laden roster. They also injected some youth into the backcourt, bringing in Kendrick Nunn and Malik Monk. Also retained Talen Horton-Tucker.
Well, the Bulls are bringing in some more star power with DeMar DeRozan. Chicago finalizing a sign and trade for the 4-time All-Star. He'll sign a 3-year, $85 million deal with the Bulls. And DeRozan will make it 3 former All-Stars in the Windy City, joining Zach LaVine and Nikola Vucevic. Bulls also spent big on Lonzo Ball. No more excuses for a team that has missed the playoffs 4 straight years. And that's not all. If you buy now, Patty Mills also left San Antonio. He'll sign a 2-year deal with the Nets. The Aussie guard, a career 39% shooter from 3, should boost the big threes supporting cast. Now they got to stay healthy. Adrian Wojnarowski now joins us. He does not have an off season, as you might be aware. Woj, the Lakers roster makeover has been swift. Newcomers nearly everywhere you look, surrounding LeBron and AD. So not just how did LA make this happen, how did they do it so quickly?
Well, free agency moves fast, Steve, and as players, are coming off the board, you've got to be aggressive in there and find the right pieces. And LA certainly, bringing in, a lot of players certainly in this group, who've been in LA before. Yesterday, Trevor Ariza, Dwight Howard, but then Carmelo Anthony today. Obviously, a lot of history with LeBron James. They go back to their teenage years at the old ABCD All-American camp. They certainly played together on Team USA, and they tried to get together at a few different points in their career. It never quite worked out, but it does now. And Carmelo Anthony comes to a Laker team that's going to need its shooting and needs a four-man on their roster like he is. And so he's become one of the better, catch-and-shoot three-point shooters in his later years. This is a top 10 all-time scorer, and this is a really unique group with just tremendous star power now in LA. Obviously, not just Carmelo Anthony, but bringing in Russell Westbrook. This is going to be a really interesting team to follow, and it's going to be a fun ride with them this season.
I don't know if the Lakers were already sold out season ticket-wise, but can you imagine trying to get a Lakers ticket now for next season? That is spectacular work by them in the offseason. I think the Bulls are one of those teams, Woj, that the NBA is better when Chicago is good. I feel like all of a sudden they've gotten a lot better. They had two starters in free agency, Lonzo Ball yesterday and DeMar DeRozan today. How'd the Bulls get that last one done?
Yeah, DeMar DeRozan needed a landing spot. There wasn't really salary cap space out there for the kind of deal that he wanted, which ultimately was 3 years, $85 million plus in Chicago. So the sign and trade route. And Chicago, giving up another first-round pick, a couple second-round picks. The Bulls have traded picks in the Nikola Vucevic trade back at the trade deadline. So they've remade their team. They've gone in now with Lonzo Ball, Vucevic, and now DeMar DeRozan with a team that I think Billy Donovan, their head coach, there's going to be expectations of making the postseason. And I think the relationship with Mark Eversley, who's the general manager, works with Arturas Karnisovas, their president. His relationship with DeRozan, going back to their days in Toronto, I believe that was a key factor in helping to sell DeRozan on it. And I think Eversley and Karnisovas' comfort with bringing DeMar DeRozan in and seeing if he can help elevate this team. And Zach LaVine, his future in Chicago. He wants to win, hasn't been in the playoffs yet. They've got to get into the postseason.
Hey, Woj, quickly on the way out here, are there enough chess pieces league-wide? Do we have another 24 hours of fun activity, or this is going to dry up quickly here league-wide?
No, there's still more pieces out there, and I think there's still some more trades possibly on the board. Dennis Schroeder's not found a home yet. That's a player to keep your eye on. Spencer Dinwiddie continues to try to see if he can get a deal done